No one's super interested in farming, but the young two are showing a little potential. We'll see what happens. Joel tweeted this yesterday. I don't know if any of you follow Joel Williams, but I thought this is really a good, profound point. In the same way that sharing failures is often more useful than sharing successes, sharing the journey of transition is much more useful when starting out than sharing the destination. Now, I'm going to show you some of the things we're doing on our farm. Doesn't mean it's going to work on your farm just the way it is. You can feel free to ask me questions at any time. I'm not telling you how to do it, but a lot of the things that just a few years ago we thought couldn't be done are working, and they're working well. So this is no-tilling soybeans into standing corn stalks from the year before. So starting out a year before this, in May of 2017, we planted corn in this field. In June, we interseeded it with rye, radish, and rape. And I'll get into the details of how we did that later. After we combined the corn, the rye and radish and rape kept growing. The rye overwintered. So then the spring of 18, this picture was taken, and we were seeding soybeans into it with an 1890 John Deere drill. Very minor modifications, which I'll show you as we go. Maybe I should get out of your way, I bet you can't see. Very minor modifications on any of our equipment so far. I found a few things I'd like to change, but you know, you need to do it with what you have, and you need to get out there and try it. You don't need to worry or wait until you can get the perfect equipment. Let's see if this plays now. What was the trick to playing this? I've got a little video here just to show you how it works. Hopefully this works. Sometimes it's a pain in PowerPoint. Just want you to watch how easily it seeds in its corn stalks. If you've never done this, you know, just a few years ago we thought it couldn't be done, and it really works well. That's a lot less pounds than I would have ever thought. So if you told me 5 years ago you could do that, I would have said, I don't know about that. We'll see. But as we're doing it, the more we're doing, the less we're worrying about what we can't do and just going out and trying things, the more we're figuring out what we can do. Here's a few of the little changes we've done so far. First thing we did with 1890, stuck it in the ground deep to fertilize that cornfield the year before. And when you put it in deep in our heavy clay soils, you plug up with mud. So we went and got mud smiths. We tried some other things first, but then we went and got mud smiths. Luckily, the guy at Thunderstruck Ag that sold them to me took the time to talk to me about it first instead of just saying, yes, I'll sell you what you're asking for. And he said, if you're going into no-till, you should, if you're primarily no-till, you should get the narrow wheels. And I wouldn't have understood that at all. I think the normal ones are 4-inch or something like that. I think these are maybe 2.5 or 3. And if you're on full tillage, you need that width to hold your unit up. If you're on no-till, the aggregate stability is holding your planter up. And if you have the narrower wheel from here to here, you're hitting a lot less debris, a lot less corn stalks, things like that. Then behind that, we've got the Needham flexible firming wheel. We're just playing around with them. I almost never have 96 units all the same on my planter. There's almost always something going on. So we do have 96 mud smiths, but the Needham wheels, we just bought a couple to try them. And I've got a Thompson closing wheel here that we like quite a bit. This is the new John Deere Pro Series. They decided to put a spiked closing wheel on the back. I think that's a great start. I think that's probably one of the first things you should look at if you're going to no-till. If we close with a solid wheel, it seems like afterwards, when the sun dries out our soil, it will open back up. So if you have anything to break that sidewall up, I think it's going to be a good thing. I'm not convinced this is the best option for a closing wheel, but it is a factory option now anyway. Another view of the Pro Series. also use a reduced inner diameter wheel here. We're going to try and put liquid on this spring, and so this is one of the things I've been looking at. When I talked to the owner, I said, you know, your website says specifically that the diameter of this wheel is 10 inches, or let's see, if it's 10 inches, you need to replace it with a 9-inch to put this on. And I said, is that the case? And he said, well, no, actually we have 10-inch ones in stock too. It doesn't say it anywhere on the website. This is my third call to the company. The prior two were not to the owner, and I didn't get the same answer. So he sent me out a couple of these to try, and we're going to see if we can get them into the linkage. Because on the Pro Series now, from here to here, it's 10 inches instead of 9. So if we can put fertilizer there, it'll be behind the firming wheel. Hopefully we don't get everything sticky on the machine. Here's another closing wheel. When I had him on the phone, he was a very good salesman, and he said, I'll send you a couple of these to try too. Here's our soybeans planted into standing rye. Well protected from the wind, still can get plenty of sun. That's a soybean field, not a rye field. Here's some of the nozzles we like. John Deere or Hypro 3D nozzle seems to do a real good job of coverage. We're terminating the rye at this point. This is some hairy vetch we found. I got my cereal rye the first year from a friend down by Wahpeton. And the next year we put soybeans on that field after we had harvested the rye. So it's a year and a half later or whatever. And when I was spraying the soybeans last summer, there was hairy vetch in it. And I was looking at this plant. I was pretty sure that's what it was, but I thought I'd call a couple of agronomists because it's not really native to my area. And they had no idea. It was kind of interesting. I looked it up, and it was hairy vetch. So I called the guy that I got the rye seed from, because this is not native to our land, at least. And he said, no, he had never had hairy vetch in his fields on purpose anyway, but that's just about for sure where it came from. That's okay, it's a good, go ahead.
Mike, if you went back a couple slides, you said you terminated your rye. Have you experimented on what's the best time to terminate that rye in the spring?
We've done a whole bunch of different termination dates from rye, and we interseeded oats into our soybeans and flax for soil health, for diversity. If you let the oats grow too long, at least in 2018, you would see detriment to the soybean yield. If you let the rye go too long in 2018, it didn't seem to matter at all. You certainly built soil health because you had a lot more roots in the ground, but we really didn't see any yield loss letting the rye mature. You know, we had plenty of it that was over knee high or heading out, and still had a very nice crop of beans. Now, I believe in the system enough that I didn't run check strips, so it's not 100% fair. You know, because we've got 2 more bushels of soybeans, that's possible. I'm not going to say you couldn't. But the oats, at least, seem to use water at a different rate. The oats need to be terminated earlier. We did the oats for IDC control, and anytime there was an oat plant right next to the soybeans, the plant was green, and if it was, 3-4 inches away, then you could have had a little IDC showing up.
What rate of oats did you plant? How many pounds?
A non-calibrated sprayer. No, I suppose when they went down the, when they went down the 1890, we could have told, but I don't remember. 12 pounds or something? Very little. You don't need much. I should have wrote that down, I'm not sure. So here's some of the rye after it's terminated. There's the soybeans again. They have a good view of the sun. Last year when we'd pull into the field with a sprayer, if I could look down and see the soybeans, it was awful tough to terminate the crop, because I figured if I could see them from the sprayer at that angle, that they were getting sunlight also. So if they're getting sunlight, I didn't know that I'd be too worried about the water use, and that with the rye, tended to be correct. With the oats, not so much. The oats probably want to terminate earlier. When you dig up roots, we had a lot of nodulation. Now, I don't go dig in other people's fields, so maybe last year was just a good year for nodulation, but we do notice a lot of nodulation even early on. I'm hoping that this is soil biology related. We'll see what happens in the future. Blessed are those who see beautiful things in humble places, where other people see nothing. I just like that quote. We have been putting on lime since 2012. We like the calcium as a large molecule to increase our infiltration. As we learn more about it, no-till probably has more to do with it, but we still like putting some on. So that was our spreader from 2012 until a year ago. And then last year we bought a self-propelled version because we realized the tractor hadn't been unhooked for a couple of years. So if we're not using it for anything else, we might as well get a 3-wheel version. Here's seeding sugar beets into cereal rye. We did a little bit of green seeded sugar beets, and we did a little bit of no-till sugar beets. There's a lot of learning to be left there, to come. But there are people successfully doing it out in Montana, I found out this winter, so that was very interesting. I talked to one of them, and he was just really excited about it. There's the spike closing wheels we put on a couple of rows on the planter. Again, that's kind of the one thing I would look at quickly is a spike closing wheel. Whether you do 1 or 2, it's up to you. But that's really just about the only thing you need to do to get started in this. We traded that 1890 off. We had all those Mudsmith narrow wheels, and the dealer didn't want them because I traded in the Red River Valley, and everyone needs 4-inch. So I took them off and put them on my planter. If you notice there, that's a 22-inch planter, and there's a lot of room between the rows when you get those gauge wheels narrowed up. So if you're straddling corn rows or something else, you got a lot of room for root balls to go through without the units bouncing. There's some no-till sugar beets. Stand is not where we want it, but it's better than I expected, I guess. It turned out okay. They weren't great. We have a lot of learning to do. I think we'll have to till at least for the short term after harvest so that we can level out our rows again. But on the front side, I think we'll make it to no-till in very, very short term here. Here's what we interseeded our corn with in 2018. In 17, it was 3 species. In 18, it was cereal rye, jackhammer tillage radish, alfalfa, crimson clover, hairy vetch, red clover, and cowpeas. Now, because we're just spreading it over the top, I would hesitate to recommend spending much money on large seeds. The cowpea, for instance, probably very few, if any, grew when they're not incorporated in the soil. This is what that mix looks like coming out the back of the spreader. That's our high-tech interseeding device. The year before, we used one from the local co-op, and that was a low-wheeled one. So I guess that would be about B4. And we thought, well, maybe that was a little bit too early. We should get one of these high-wheeled ones. We'd have a little more flexibility. But in 2018, then we used this high wheel. And we actually were a little bit later than I'd like to be. I'm going to move that back up. It's really sensitive in 22-inch rows if you want to do interseeding to get it established before canopy. And that's a very tight window. So I would say, probably you should be out there in B4 if you're doing it like we are with the spreader. If you build an interseeder, then you could go a little bit later. This is our high-tech blending device. The bigger mix was bought pre-blended, but otherwise, most of this stuff, when Dave Franzen does it, he's got a scale and he weighs everything, and that's wonderful if you have time, but I would say it's much more important with most of these things to just get going and try them, and perfection is not necessarily needed. This is a friend of mine from Minton, Saskatchewan. It's his interseeder. He's interseeding wheat. That's 15-inch rows of wheat, and I don't think he saw any yield loss going out to 15-inch rows, but they would normally be in 10s or 12s on like our 7.5s. This is Jeremy Wilson's interseeder. Again, we've got a long ways to go on the interseeder. Renting the local co-ops is nowhere near what these guys are doing, but it's getting me started, so I'm learning. I think Jeremy can interseed 1,000 acres with this machine with one fill, if I remember right. And they run awfully fast, like 9 miles an hour or something like that. It really doesn't take long at all. This is wide drop. You guys have probably all seen this, but this is how we top dress our corn late in the season. That works out really well. If you haven't seen it, if you look here, there's a hose dragging by each row. And you can see where the liquid is, and it's within a couple inches of the corn at all times versus just down the center or anything else you've ever done. So we like that a lot. There's definitely a little bit of damage when you turn and things, but the neat thing we learned from turning with the sprayer and crop damage, when you are interseeded, and you can see how small our interseeding here is, it should have been bigger by this point. That's 2018. In 17 it would look a little nicer. But anywhere you kill the crop with the sprayer, the sun gets a chance to get your cover crop going. So when you come in at the combine, you've got a nice cover crop there instead of uncontrolled weeds. It's a very nice side benefit. Here's top dressing some wheat. We actually got the delivery truck to park on the state highway and fill my truck while he's filling me. Here we're planting some trees. We planted about 500 trees a couple of years ago. And then this is maybe last year, I suppose, we planted maybe 100 more or something just to clean things up. We had some that have died and put some different varieties in and stuff. We had 10 acres a couple of years ago that I didn't know what for sure to do with. It didn't get planted in the spring like I wanted to, so we decided to put alfalfa in. I've never grown hay before, we have no animals. So I didn't know anything about it. We just went out and spread the alfalfa very thin with a small, like a 4310 and a little spin spreader. And I did it small like that so that we'd make sure we got the whole field covered with the seed required, even if I had to go out and do it twice. And then I got our big, I don't know, 80-foot harrow, I guess it is, and on a 10-acre field. Turned about 6 times and it was covered and worked in. And then next year we had alfalfa. So this is probably the second year cutting right here of alfalfa, and the stand got very nice. Now this field went from a very poor infiltration rate to the fastest infiltration on our farm in 2 years. Some of you guys maybe recognize that hoodlum. We're getting a lot of roots and a lot of aggregate stability. Just a few years ago, I wouldn't have known what that even meant, the aggregate stability part, but when you see the way things are held together, the root exudates put out sugars and basically help the soil hold itself together so that you get aggregate stability. So as the water runs down, it's got a channel to go in. It's not smashed together with a blocked channel like when we do tillage. If you don't have a shovel in the back of your pickup, you should. I, as a farmer, probably did not have one until a couple of years ago, and now it's in the back of my pickup almost all the time. And quite often we'll just dig and find different things, and it's not usually what we're looking for that we find. We dug in those no-till sugar beets last year. The agronomist was pretty excited about it, so he came out and was visiting with me. And we spent about 4 hours digging in sugar beets, 50 feet apart. We had the same variety, no-till versus tilled. And when we dug up the no-tilled ones, they had a Rhizoctonia scar on the side. And he took his pocket knife and scratched at it and was dried up. When we went over to the tilled beets, this is only a couple tillage passes and about 50 feet apart. And when he got to them, there was a little Rhizoctonia there, and that was still wet and active. he was very convinced that the biology in our soil was already producing soil health or crop health benefits at that point. There's some of our rye and the soybeans. I just put the pickup in there for height so you can tell, but it is actually pretty tall. This is the field we did a field day on this summer. We dug a soil pit. We did aggregate stability tests. So who in here is familiar with the slate test? Half or better? So which one of these two do you think would be mine? Left one, that's correct. So I suppose the field day was 3 stations and 80-some people that went around. I suppose it was half an hour per thing. So maybe for an hour and a half or 2 hours or something like that, my soil sat here in this slate test. And we went over to my neighbors and I dug a little bit there. And every 20 or 30 minutes that we went around and had the stations move, we had to refill this one. This is probably about halfway through. This is about 10 minutes or so. He's lost half his soil. It's going down in the water, as you can see. And mine sat there like this for the whole period. That is only in a couple of years, guys. We can do wonderful things in a very short time when you start learning how to do it. So there's a couple of the sites for a field day. This is the soybean field. I went around the perimeter of the field and terminated the rye. When you terminate rye, in about 6 days, it'll all be dead if you terminate it with glyphosate. And about 6 days after that, about 6 days after that, it'll be, if you terminate it early, it'll be gone to the point you'd be hard pressed to figure out what had been there if you don't let it elongate and get to the later stages of growth. So even where we walked on this and we dug up a soil pit, drove the excavator in and everything else, this field, when we were all done, did about 40.8 bushels. I don't know what it would have done if we hadn't done any of that or if we had still been full till or anything else, but I thought last year 40.8 bushels for as many acres as we disturbed and everything else was pretty good. Here's a big one for this whole thing, guys. Don't be afraid to fail. Be afraid not to try. Failing is usually where we learn the most. A couple of years ago, we had a field we didn't know what to do with, so we planted 115 acres of oats for soil health. Hadn't been oats on our farm that I ever remember, and most of the neighbors didn't know much about them or anything either. And we had a pretty good crop there. We also, in the first year, took that field, which was one of our lower OMs, to one of our highest in one season. Now, soil tests are pretty site-specific. I mean, in 115 acres, if you're coring 3, 4, 5 places in the field, that could be a fluke, but it really did do wonderful things for the soil. There was a ton of roots in the ground. This is another oat field. I just wanted to show you the clean line there, how nice it worked on the spraying. We got Roundup Ready soybeans right next to oats, and I bet there's not a foot gap in between there. Pretty fun to combine. They run about like corn, so they keep the trucks busy for sure. We put flax in a lot of our wheat last year. We did that for soil health. We want to create diversity whenever we have the chance. We didn't see any detrimental effects. We didn't put much in. I think it was 2 to 4 pounds. But then after we combined, the flax came back up. If there was any that was mature enough to go through the combine, we didn't see it in the grain tank, but it's such a small seed, it would probably fall to the bottom and it would be easily missed anyway. But if there was any, I suspect it went out the back end and got reseeded, and that's fine. So now we got 2 seedings with 1 seed expense. I think anytime you can increase your diversity, it's going to be a good thing. If we want to do this mimicking nature, anywhere you go in nature, you're never going to see a monoculture. And yet we're trying to force all of our fields to be monocultures. Here's something new for our farm for this year. That's a Shelburne Reynolds stripper head. Not a new thing at all, just not too common around here. Kevin and I, who sold them 20-some years ago in A&H in Grafton, we're getting a 42-foot this spring, so we'll strip our cereals this spring if things work right, or summer if this works right. By doing that, we'll leave the straw standing. We won't have to process it through the combine. We like to cut 40 feet, or this is going to be 42, but we like to cut 40 feet, and there's hardly a chopping system out there that will manage your residue at 40 feet. You know, it might do a nice job at 30 or 35, but realistically at 40, you're probably striping like we are. We put new knives in the combine. That is a very significant change. Even though John Deere told us they easily would go another year, we just decided to do it because we knew we wanted to spread our residue better. Any spring seeding problems you're going to have are usually starting from residue problems in the fall. So if we keep this attached to the soil, and if all we're running through is the grain, we're going to have a lot less chaff. Like it'll just be a light chaff line instead of a heavy line. So our no-till seeding should go much better in the spring. Here's some guys from Australia that follow me on Twitter, seeing what we have been doing with cover crops. So they asked if they could drive up and visit our farm one day when they were in the States. If you're not on Twitter yet, this is a big plug for Twitter. I really like it. You can meet people from all over the world. That's where they were from. I had them sign my map. Unsolicited plug for Twitter. If you want to learn the latest ideas in regenerative ag, join Twitter. There is a wealth of information shared in this platform constantly. You know, Twitter, I don't know if you guys Facebook or do anything else, but if you're not on Twitter, you got to check it out. I'm not on Facebook. I don't like hearing how people feel today. I don't care how your aunt's brother, whatever, but there's a lot of neat ag information on Twitter. It's quick, it's clean, it's simple, and you learn a lot of things. Even when the combines are coming up from the south, you can get a trend on what parts are breaking in the combines. Like this John Deere sieve shakeout thing last summer on the S series. My dealer never called me until quite a while after I'd seen it on Twitter, and I called him. Last fall, after my 6th grade daughter's basketball game up in Walhalla, we went up to the Pembina Gorge. I don't know if you guys have been there, but it's just a beautiful place to walk around if you have time. And we were just looking at nature. And if you pay attention to nature, there is no place that there is a monoculture anywhere. Even where you say it's a grassland, there's probably broadleafs in it. There's probably many species of grass. If you look around, they're all getting along together. There has to be something going on here, guys, and we have not been paying attention. Last fall, we decided to test for soybean cyst nematode because I just had some suspicious spots in field. One of the first spadefuls I pulled up had a bunch of worms, and I thought that looked pretty cool. Now, if you get excited about seeing how many worms are in your field, and you think that's a soil health measure, I very much agree it is. I will also warn you, they're very finicky. I'm not sure you're going to find them some days. Like some days it's too hot or it's too cold, or they didn't feel like being in the spade where you put them, or you wanted to look for them. So don't get disappointed if you don't see a bunch, but we can take a spadeful now and get 8 or 9 worms a lot of times, and I think that's got to be a lot better than just a couple of years ago on our farm. Have you guys heard of the soil your undies thing? This is on Jeremy Wilson's farm last summer. They had buried some cotton, and cotton will very much be a telltale for how much biology you have, because biology will eat that cotton. So where it's eaten away here, that is a very biologically active soil, and that is absolutely what our goal should be. If you bury some cotton And I don't know what the time period is, maybe a couple months. And if you do that and it comes up without a bunch of holes in it, you don't have much biology and you should start questioning why. This is some of the more complicated air seeding things. You know, in the valley here, I had never paid much attention to 1890s until we had ours. And it's a single chute air system. This is a friend of mine up in Saskatchewan. You can see he's got 2 manifolds, so he can move hoses around. He can strip, you know, product A in row 1, product B in row 2, and so on, any way he wants to move things around. He's also got liquid on here. There's just a lot of things we can do as we get into this, but you don't need this to get started. For some of you, like me, you've probably never seen 2 airstreams even. I had not paid much attention to that until a couple of years ago. There's what it looks like. So you pull a pin here and you can choose which tube this meter is going to drop into. We bought a dual stream cart this year, but on an 1890 you still just can get 1 manifold. So we're adding the second set of manifolds, and then we're going to figure this out to do a similar setup. This is some stuff from, I believe, Saskatchewan. Why intercrops increase yields. Up there, they're doing 3 and 4 cash crops simultaneously. Now, that's probably a little bit ahead of what you guys want to hear about, but I'll just tell you that it's out there. And there's some really neat reasons why. The synergy between the plants is working well. Even at the bottom, the adoption to climate change. You know, you might have 1 crop in your field that does better in a dry year and 1 in a wet year, so you're more apt to get a crop every year. Diversity in the soil, I think, is an awful lot like diversity in our life. If you only eat at McDonald's, you're certainly shorting your body of a lot of nutrition. Not that McDonald's is bad, but you're getting one set of nutrients only. Same with your monocrop. You're feeding only 1 portion of your biology. The more diversity we can get out there, the more biology is going to thrive. Some neat concepts here too that might be a little bit ahead of some of you guys if you're new to this, but just so you see it's out there. Plants can actually talk to each other, they can work together, there's proof that they can share water between each other, they can share nutrients. Pretty amazing things are being found out. You listen to Rick Bieber from South Dakota, he says you need to have a cool season and a warm season grass, a cool season and a warm season broadleaf on every acre every couple of years, and that's supporting the diversity statement I just made. Here's a big one. I probably got this more from Jeremy Wilson than anyone else. Address the problem instead of treating the symptom. So often we'll go out and we'll say, oh, my crop isn't doing well. We'll call a chemical guy and he'll come out and say, I got a jug for that. And this jug's proven to save the world, whatever. And we put that on and, well, you know, it might be a Band-Aid on the problem, but it's not, or on the problem, but it's not changing the solution. So if we can increase our diversity, we will have healthier plants. Healthier plants move more sugar. As they move more sugar, they're going to fight off some diseases on their own. This is probably my favorite picture on infiltration. This is from Jimmy Evans down in Oklahoma. He stood up in Bismarck in November, and he said there was a pretty big rain event down in Oklahoma. And he said it could rain more on the right side of the road. And that's exactly the response he got. Yeah, I doubt that it rained any different on either side, but as we go through it here, we have an infiltration problem, not a drainage problem. If you look at that picture, the right side of that road looks like the whole Red River Valley after a 2-inch rain. So here's Jimmy presenting it out in Bismarck. There's a 5.3-inch rain event. And here's the details of what was on each side. The left side was no-till crop rotation, cover crops, planned grazing and management with an infiltration rate of 6 inches an hour for a 5-inch rain. Nothing standing, nothing eroding. The right side was conventional tillage, small grains, cover crops, or no cover crops and no grazing with an infiltration rate of 0.6 inches an hour. Again, a 5-inch rain. What a mess. Who's seen an infiltration test? Who's done one on your own farm? We need to get started with this. When you see this, you'll start believing all the rest of it. This is the most eye-opening thing you've ever seen. Common knowledge would have probably been that tillage dries out the soil and allows water to go in, and that is exactly the opposite of reality. If you get an infiltration test out on your farm, now maybe if you're in sandy soil, I'm in heavy clay, maybe if you're in sandy soil this won't ring true and that's fine. But on my soil, the first year, Abby and Luke came out and we did infiltration tests. 2 of the 3 rings did not infiltrate. I've got a picture of Luke Ressler after he pulled a tube out of the ground. It's a 6-inch diameter tube, 6 inches long, and you push it 3 inches in the soil. You put in 16.9 ounces, basically a water bottle, and that's the equivalent of an inch of rain. And then you time it. When you see the water gone at the surface, that's your first inch infiltration. And typically you follow that up with a second inch. Well, 2 of our 3 did not infiltrate in any reasonable amount of time. 20 minutes or more, we finally pulled them out. I've got a picture of Luke holding this tube, a 6-inch metal tube, 3 inches of soil on the bottom. The bottom of the soil's dry, 3 inches down, sat for quite a while. And there's no moisture there whatsoever. There's water on top of the tube. If you go out and do that in your own soil, and if you get poor infiltration rates like we did, you'll start paying attention to no-till. The less we disturb the soil, the more the aggregate stability will be, the more biology we'll have, and the more we'll get a rain event like this to recharge our soil, like the field on the left. You know, he's recharged and ready. Now, how many years in our climate does August quit raining? We have this beautiful bean crop coming, and then August comes around and it quits raining. We all say, boy, we lost the top 10 bushels of soybeans because we didn't have enough rain in the ground. We didn't have enough water in the ground. Well, even if we had a 5.3 inch event in July, if it all went down the ditch, it didn't do our soybeans any good. We definitely have an infiltration problem, not a drainage problem. And last fall, probably like many of you, we had to bring the headers in every night, warm them up, so that they'd turn again the next day for our snow beans. Do you have any questions?
When you interseeded flax in your wheat, when you're spraying herbicide, what do you use so you kill flax?
Okay, so what herbicide did we use to not kill the flax? Ramoxil or something like that, like Bronate, something like that. We didn't have much weed pressure, and it got through that nicely. And I thought, well, if it doesn't, it's a learning thing, but it got through it nicely. I could look it up for sure, but it's something like that. Go ahead.
What are your views on tiling? Have you done any?
We have one quarter tile, and I think there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's a great idea, but we have not seen any large economic reason to continue. I see much more value in incorporating the things we're doing today. If we can afford it, will I tile more? Yeah, probably, but it's not going to be a rush if we can get our infiltration rates up. If we can get our infiltration rates up, so after a 5-inch rain, my field looks like the one on the left, I won't really care about tile. Go ahead.
Have you done another infiltration test since that first one?
Absolutely, and it's vastly improved. Oh, I'm sorry. Have we done another infiltration test since the first ones that 2 of the 3 did not infiltrate? And yes, we have, and it's vastly improved. Go ahead.
Like, what
going to be a learning curve. If I had healthy biological soil like Jeremy Wilson, I would go up there and I'd no-till him right now. We are not there yet, and no one's written a book on how to get there, so we're going to push through.
If I may, I've talked to producers in Westbrook County and Minnesota side, and I run into, there's not enough science, and that's been probably the biggest question out there, which makes sense, and I'm just wondering with your experience and efforts, have you heard the same or not?
So the question is, are no-till sugar beets going to work? And they absolutely are. It's a matter of how we're going to figure out how to do them. We will keep working on it. I now have some contacts in Montana as of a couple of weeks ago that I'm going to certainly go see this summer, and we'll learn more from them. But the big trick there is they started with no-till a long time ago, so they had healthy soils at this point, and their sugar beet crop is increasing every year. They can't believe how much better it's getting. They're getting quite a bit over the average sugar, same tons, and no-till.
Thank you.
You got South Fairview, Montana, where you're speaking of, right across the border. Just in the Montana a little ways, probably, there's a sugar beet plant that we South Fairview for 80 miles. I drove quite a bit around there. I noticed a lot of sugar beet activity. I was just curious if that's the part of the world you're referring to.
His name was Greg, but I don't remember. I looked it up, and I don't remember where he is, but I'm definitely going to go see him. And there were 4 more in either no-till or sugar grower, one of the two. Either Sugar Grower Magazine or No-Till Farmer had 4 in the last month, and there was one in the opposite publication, I believe, before that. So, but all in the Montana area at this point. Go ahead.
What are you seeing in the springtime with the ground cover versus bare black soil with soil temperatures when you're getting out there?
So I don't have a FLIR camera. It's on my want list, but I haven't got one yet. I really think that the biology is going to overact the black soil that everyone thinks is so important. There's no question that the black picks up the sun more, but I think that the biology is going to supersede that. I think we're going to be warmer faster. Now, just a very, very unscientific observation yesterday when we went out to pick eggs, because we've got some chickens, my young girls do. 3 of our fields in a row, that are all no-till, one's alfalfa, had quite substantial areas with no snow on them. And the neighbor's field, like the 4th field in a row, was 100% covered still. Now, again, very unscientific, non-replicated data, but there's a lot of hope when you're using cover crops that we're going to get in as soon or sooner. The other thing with cover crops, if you're green seeding, if you haven't done that yet, that is just amazing. Compared to tilled soil, your planter will run cleaner, it will run smoother, there will be less dust, everything works better. And in our heavy clay soil, if we get a 1/10 of an inch of rain, we're shut down right now, probably till tomorrow or something. We certainly won't do more today. And now, when we're green seeding, we can probably keep driving through at least the beginning of that, and at least get out of the field, get to the pickup without shoes that are a foot tall. So I see a lot of potential with cover crops. Without cover crops, I would say no-till is a scary thing in this area. Go ahead.
Do you ever use a rock roller after seeding or planting soybeans?
What are rocks?
A lot of people use them just to smooth the ground and firm the ease
Right.
down.
Right.
If you don't have rocks.
Yeah. No, yes, if we use a rock roller, we actually don't. We don't have rocks, but yes. One thing in the future I'd like to get to, as we can get it figured out, is a different termination process for cereal rye. It can easily be, well, I don't know if it's easy, but it can be killed with a crimper roller. And I know Lauren Steinlage's got one that'll go between the rows, so that's definitely an interesting thing. If we could let the rye grow a little taller, but have it specifically placed so that you plant your soybeans between it, we could probably come in and non-chemically but mechanically terminate that rye and lay it down and make a tremendous bed to drive on for weed control, water erosion control, all of it. So that's one of the future ideas. Go ahead.
Have you ever tried
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so have we ever tried oats for cover crop and sugar beets? Yes, we have. For Phantomyces, I guess I don't know if it's done any good for that or not, but we had oats in all of our sugar beets last year, and we let some of them grow up. We put them very, very thin, so we let some of them grow up pretty mature. When we came across with the first pass of glyphosate, it killed everything that was up, and we had regrowth. So we had 2 flushes of oats last year, and it was just fine with me. Just pure luck. If we had had different rain spells, we would not have had 2 flushes. So we had biology in the soil besides sugar beets most of the season.
That was a thought about 15 years ago when we had to quit using sugar beets because of oats. And we put oats after sugar beets, we did have to wait a couple of years. But we thought with this cover crop thing, oats might be something to try.
Phantomyces is fairly water-based disease, so I think anytime we get our infiltration up, I think that's there's so many synergistic things that are going to go on. I don't know which one's going to be more important, but we're going to see some vast improvements in agriculture as we adopt these technologies.
Our worst in Phantomyces we had Crystal was checking. There was a field that we tiled afterwards, and you put the trials in there, and Phantomyces disappeared. Tiling or any kind of internal drainage. It wasn't the surface drainage so much, it was the insurance drainage.
He's saying the Phantomyces on a bad sugar beet field was corrected a few years after tiling. I think that would be very much the same with infiltration. If we can increase our infiltration rates, I'm quite sure we will decrease our Phantomyces pressure. Go ahead.
So are you putting sugar beets in your old wheat stubble? And if you are, what are you doing as far as reduced tillage to get your ground ready to plant your beets in? And how do you work the ground, if you work the ground in the spring?
So how do we work our ground for sugar beets? We have a John Deere VT disc. If it hasn't been tilled in the fall, we could go with the VT disc and then maybe Hero Pack. It's very up in the air. I have different ideas every year because we want to get to no-till and we're just not there yet. The no-till that I showed you, the only tillage in that no-till strip that I showed you was anhydrous knives the fall before. That's the only thing that had actually tilled the soil. A lot of people talk about no-till this or no-till that. And, I've heard people say, yeah, I no-till with an 11 on my air seeder. That the Concord is not no-till, guys. It's just not. But there's just so many different ideas. A lot of guys talk about a stale seed bed as no-till, and that's fine. It's better than nothing, but it's not no-till. It's just not the same thing. This is true no-till, except for a knife every 15 inches for anhydrous.
Are you planting your whole farm that way?
Absolutely not. We did 10 acres of no-till, 10 acres of green seeded, and there was nothing great to report, I'll tell you that.
So what are you doing on the rest of your ground? Because you're doing a really good job on your beans and your corn, and you're creating this monoculture in these bacteria and all this great stuff, but then when you get to sugar beets, are you wrecking everything you did the last 2 years? That's where I'm struggling at.
So the question is, are we wrecking everything we're doing the year we have sugar beets? And I would say we're definitely taking a step backwards, but if we took 3 steps forwards and 1 back, I'm still happy with it. But there's no question we're taking a step backwards the way we currently do beets. By adding a cereal like oats for a cover crop, at least we have a little diversity in the biology right away. Typically, it would be either that VT disc or, if we have to, it could be chisel plowed. I don't think we've chisel plowed for a couple of years before beets. But really, that VT disc is one of the only things that'll take standing stubble in the spring and put it into any condition that we are used to. But I think we can get to no-till, we're just not there yet.
So you're doing all of your tillage in the spring of the year currently. Is that what I'm hearing?
I would say that's a vast majority. Right now, I probably have, I don't think I have any sugar beet fields tilled for this year, but I do have some green seeded. And we'll see how the spring comes out, and you can definitely come out and look and learn and laugh with me.
Do you have row cleaners on your planter?
We do not. We do not have row cleaners in our planter. I'm not against any of these parts. I just want you guys to get started. Don't think that you have to have the perfect planter with, row cleaners on the front and spike closing wheels on the back and everything in between. You don't need that to get started. Will you decide what you need as you go? Sure you will. You'll make your changes as you go. We have a lot of ideas on these closing wheels, and we're going to probably run 3-4 different sets this year, and we'll look at them again. Go ahead.
Mike, how do you work in your line when you spread it? That one of those first slides, you were direct seeding soys into that corn crop, and you had your rear gang up on the seeder. How'd you get fertilizer for your soybeans?
I don't. Okay, so how do we get fertilizer for our soybeans is the question. Then did you also ask how do we incorporate the lime?
Yeah.
Okay, so in the past we've tilled our lime in. I think that there's a benefit in doing that because you get it incorporated into the top 4 to 6 inches versus just on top. I think in the future, because of what we're learning about infiltration, I think the tillage is going to be, the incorporation is going to be less important than the costs associated with tillage. I think even if we laid 2 or 3 ton on top and let it be there and hope that it works in with roots and worms and everything else, I think that's probably the future. At this point, we've tilled in almost all of our land. But we will continue to do some. I think we'll try and do no-till. We're hearing, like last year at Nationals in Louisville, the comment was that lime will not go in without tillage, but what's the other amendment? Similar? Help me out, guys. Gypsum will go in without tillage. I don't know if there's anything to that. Lime is our only cost-effective source of calcium. So we'll continue to do it. How it gets incorporated, I'm not sure. I know if we put 10 ton on top of the surface, the next year you'll still see it at the combine. It'll be dusty and messy in the field. So I'm not convinced that's a good idea. As we get more aggregate stability, I think it'll go down better. So it's all a process, guys. We do not have this figured out at all. We're just trying.
Have you noticed any change in the pH using this method?
We probably haven't been doing it long enough to know. We have it all recorded. We have chemical soil tests on all of our fields down to 24 inches. I think there's less and less of a value for chemical soil tests. I think that we'll work more towards ANEs and PFLAs and the more biologically active tests in the future. But the question was, have we noticed our pH change? We have not yet. I do believe, very similar to the aphanomyces, as we get better infiltration, we will probably lower our pH a little, at least I hope. The lime now comes in about 8.2 to 8.3, and we've got an awful lot of soil that's at that same level. So the lime's not doing us any harm as far as raising pH. Go ahead.
See, as far as infiltration after sugar beets, you go no-till 3-4 years with sugar beets. There isn't anything that's got better infiltration than sugar beets. You've got that dead root down there 4 feet in the ground that shrinks up and that never gets screwed up on sugar beet field, no matter how it is. I don't see that as a problem at all.
So the comment is that sugar beets will help your infiltration, and there's no question I agree with that. We run an Archway 12-row harvester, and with that, we get a ridge in the middle. And because of that ridge, and me just not knowing another way yet, after we've harvested, we run out and we spread cereal rye. At that time in the game, there's no reason to add any more to it than cereal rye because it's the only thing that's going to go over winter, really. And we'll run a cultivator, field cultivator, at a sharp angle, like 20 degrees or so, 2 directions, and probably 1 shovel in 3 will be above ground at all times. We're just basically knocking the ridges down. We get a pretty smooth seed bed. It'll all be green in the spring. And if we were blessed with a late fall, some of it sprouted and did some good in the fall. Now, I don't know if you guys were well versed in cereal rye or not, or even, how many of you are on Twitter? Okay, a few of you, that's nice. Any of you follow Kaylee Gash from NDSU? She had a picture of some rye I think it was this winter. I think that rye was like a couple inches tall above ground, and she's got a little shorter arm than me, but it was from her elbow to her wrist, the roots were, even though above ground, it was only a couple inches. So even if we don't see much in the fall, we really like putting some in after our beet ground, because then in the spring, if it happens to dry out and get windy, you know, it's already locked down.
If it germinates, it's live in the spring.
Well, usually. It's certainly like alfalfa or anything else could kill off. We've lost some in ditches before, but for the most part, it's a pretty healthy, pretty hardy plant. Go ahead.
What do you plant? What's your rotation like? So you plant your beets, what's your next crop? I'm kind of curious on all that.
Well, we follow corn and soybeans, that's a given. We have a cereal in front of our beets. Right now it's oats, used to be wheat. Other than that, it's pretty up in the air. So right now we grow corn, soybeans, rye, oats, sugar beets, alfalfa. I think that's it. And we're looking for more crops all the time as we can handle them. But bin space gets to be an issue in a real hurry because you can't commingle everything. But the more diversity we can get in our rotation, I think the better things will go. But there's no rock solid, it's a matrix, and I move it around every year, however we can make it work. Go ahead.
Do you have any land in the Red River floodplain, and if so, any issues with stalks piling up in drifts?
Do we have any land in the floodplain, and do we get problems with stalks piling up in drifts? Yes, absolutely we do. Probably a third of our ground will flood on a big year, on 2009 or 97, and that's a huge reason to shut the stalk chopper off on the combine as fast as you can without losses. Last fall we had down corn, so we had to go so slow that the chopping rolls even cut it. So we have a lot of short corn this year and a lot of debris in the ground. That'll be a bad thing if it rains or anything like that, if it puddles in the corner. But the more we can keep attached to the surface, the more we know where it's placed. That'll be another issue for that Reynolds stripper head. The more wheat straw that stays in one place, won't move around with wind or rain. Go ahead.
Maybe you said it, but can you just again tell us why you made this change? Because you were, you know, what you did in the past. What was the line that came across that you said, let's change something out?
I guess I got to know some people that were doing it, and it sounded very interesting that they were seeing a lot of benefits. Then along the way, the infiltration, one of the first things, I don't think I told you guys, but we built a root box, and the reason of the root box was to see that the roots were somewhat equal to the top growth in cereals. So my root box is very inexpensive, low scientific value. It's I believe it's 2x8s, and it's about 2 feet tall and 5 inches wide, and a sloped side on it. So in theory, you plant the seed, the roots go down, you cover the sides, because roots can't see light. If they see light, they burn off or go away or whatever. So you have the sides covered, the roots go down, you can pull the side up and look at the roots. When you look at the roots, you'll see how deep they are versus how tall it is above ground. Well, when we first did that, my 5th grade daughter at the time and I helped put the soil back in there for one of our fields. And it came out of a cornfield that had not been tilled, and we took it out just as carefully as we could in the right levels so that it was clay on the bottom, black dirt on the top and everything. And we put it in this brick box just very carefully without packing it, no compaction whatsoever. And we took a red Solo cup because it was completely dry and poured it on top. And do you think the water went down? Zero compaction. The water puddled on top. Completely dry soil. What we had done by disturbing the soil was essentially the same as tillage. That water went down about this far, and you could see it on the sides because the sides of this root box are clear. And that's all the further it went, it puddled on the top. So that was kind of interesting, and that wasn't what we were looking for at all, but kind of an eye-opening experience to how bad our infiltration was. Well, then we put some cover crops in there, and we started watching the roots grow. And they'd get up a little ways and I'd get tired of them because they're in the middle of my office, so they didn't get enough sun to grow really well, but they were showing our point. I'd take a scissor and I'd cut them off, flip them over, kind of like no-till, put some new seeds in there. We did that about 3 times. About March or so, we took that same red solo cup and put it across the top, and it ran to the bottom as quick as it could be. Now, yesterday, when my daughter watered the plants again, because we've got this, it's just kind of a perpetual thing, whatever we're going to grow in there. And the bottom of that root box now is well sealed as I thought I had it. It's completely leaking out. It's probably going to rot the wood because the water's always in the, it never sits on the top. When you see something like that, you realize how important just something as simple as infiltration is. Then when you continue to learn, you learn about biology and everything else, and it all goes together. Go ahead.
We used to hear all the time, you know, it would take 3, 4, maybe 5 years to really see benefits from this transition. Would you say it's safe to say in that first year to 2 that you're seeing a lot of benefits?
So the question, if I heard it right, is it used to be 3 to 5 years to see no-till benefits, and I would not argue much with that at all. In fact, I'd maybe even drag it on a little longer if you don't have cover crops. If you have cover crops, you keep your soil covered, you follow the 5 soil health principles, you're definitely going to see some benefits inside of a year. Russell will tell you how quickly the biology doubles, and I'm not going to steal his fun, but it's amazing. And will it be economic? Will it show you in your checkbook? Not in a year or 2. No, I don't think so. It's nothing. It's not like flipping a switch. It's a process. But you'll start seeing infiltration inside of 12 months. And if you can change your infiltration, and you quit tilling, increase your biology, it's going to happen. It's going to be better. Now after that, you know, maybe you should look at what biology you're feeding. But that's down the road a little bit. Let's just get started. You know, if someone else figures it out before me, let me know. If you want to come and ask me questions anytime, feel free. Go ahead.
Do you see any negative aspects? I mean, that's probably the biggest concern, is are we going to see something negative?
So do I see any negative aspects
I mean,
of
as
the
far
question?
as yield, I mean, are you looking at when you're making this change? Because we all know over time, we can understand the good it'll do, but I mean, we're looking at, if you notice your yields when you've implemented this, they've gone down and then come back up.
So we noticed our yield changes. I would say we're very competitive with the neighbors, and I would say, as one of my first slides there from Joel Williams said, it's a journey, and I can tell you about the destination all I want. I'm not there yet. We haven't seen any big losses. We've certainly seen some efficiencies that are beyond my expectations. We have right now a 2013 550 quad track for sale if anyone's looking. It's way more tractor than I need to pull a grain cart, and that's all that's got left for a job. So if anyone needs a 2013 quad track, $1,500, how long do I get to speak? We've got one of the sweetest quad tracks for sale you'll find, and we just don't have use for it. Okay, so is there a drawback? You said, I like doing tillage, it's fun, I like the smell in the spring. So, you know, maybe my garden's gonna get abused or something, I'm not real sure, because the first time you till tree rows in the spring, there's no better smell. It's the same thing in your field, but sorry guys. Go ahead.
Mike, you're planting soybeans into rye. You let that stand for quite a while. I'm just curious about harvestability. Have you noticed any difference at harvest time in either dry conditions or wet conditions? Does it have any impact, that extra residue or that extra plant?
Well, if anything, we have more tractability as we have more roots in the ground. We make less ruts. Headers maybe work a little better, in my opinion. Any other questions? Go ahead.
How are you getting all your nutrients down?
That is a big challenge in the beginning of this, for sure. So one of the first things we did for corn is we ran the 1890 in front of it to pre-band. And we realized when you stick that 1890 all the way in the ground in our heavy clay soils, you will plug the thing up. So that's the narrow mud smiths. Again, this is a work in progress. There's a lot of different things involved. way too many pieces to explain in a simple answer, but if you talk to Dave Branson right now, he is not opposed to spreading some fertilizer on top of the ground. I'm not promoting that or not promoting it, but what he'll tell you is on top of the ground, it's less likely to leach than lightly harrowed in. If you can't incorporate it a couple inches, you should not just lightly harrowed in. He's thinking it's because of the physical pellet having more contact with the soil and breaking down. But so we do it various ways. We do a little bit of top dressing. We do a little bit of split application. We do some pre-banding. We have a whole bunch of different ideas, and I haven't dialed in on anything that's the answer. And yet, you know, we're getting by as we step our way in. As we increase our soil health and our biology, we will definitely decrease our nutrient needs, our synthetic nutrient needs. Another thing we're trying to do is incorporate livestock. I'm not even going to talk about that yet because it hasn't happened, but next year, if you listen to me talk, we'll probably be talking about animals. Go ahead.
What are you going to do with them cows in February?
What are we going to do with the cows in February? And that is very much to be determined.
There's nothing better than livestock. What do you do with them in February in the valley?
We have a few theories, but we're not dialed in yet. I'd sure like to see them out there all summer on a multi-species cover crop on some small percentage of the farm. Go ahead.
What about the use of anhydrous?
Use of anhydrous. Honestly, just a few years ago, that was one of my favorite fertilizers for any grass, corn or wheat. In my opinion, it was the opposite charge of the soil, so it wasn't leaching and it lasted a long time. At this point, I don't think we'll ever pull anhydrous on our farm again. From the simple understanding of the smell, anyone that's touched anhydrous knows what I'm talking about. If it can kill us, what in the world is doing it to our biology? Dave Branson does not say it's a problem. He says spaced out, maybe not every season or whatever else, it's still a viable option. So, if you want to listen there, that's fine. But on our farm, I don't think there will be any more anhydrous. I think it just kills too much biology and it would be too big a cost.
We're pretty heavy into anhydrous and no-kill and strip-kill. And since we started practicing reduced tillage or whatever you want to call it, we're still using anhydrous. And we're still getting some benefits. Like when I dig for corn, I find way more worms than corn plants after some behind the planter. But we are putting it in probably once.
So he says they're into regenerative ag. They're putting anhydrous on still, but reducing tillage to no-till?
Yeah.
Except for the spike, or you're putting it with the disc?
We're doing strip till on corn, and then all the other crops are.
So they're strip tilling their corn, and they're still using anhydrous, and he's finding a lot of worms. So there's most of these questions, guys, there's not a right or wrong answer. You just gotta get out there and try. Gotta see what works for you, see what works in your soil, and don't be scared to try. Another thing, if you get on Twitter, yes, I like Twitter, you'll find that almost any crazy idea you've had has already been exposed out there. So whether it's good, bad, or otherwise, you can get a little bit of a heads up. Yep, go ahead.
Do you have any alkali soil where you're at? Are you not in that blessed zone the rest of us are?
So I don't think we have sodic soils by definition, but alkali, that's what we've called it all my life. We have one quarter in particularly that didn't grow much in the corner of two state highways when we bought it. And we've had sugar beets on it approximately every third or fourth year for 30 years, I suppose. And that's definitely performing better. We're also finding, and Naeem and Franson agree with us, that oats are more salt tolerant than we realized before. Usually barley is one of the first things you hear about salt tolerance. If you have a salt problem, you can get barley going. Oats are right there. In fact, maybe just as good. So when we had boats on that field last year for the first time ever, I think you'd be challenged to find the spot that I would have called alkali 30 years ago in the yield now. It might be a little bit less, but it's the edge of the field, but something grew there. So we don't have any big problems with it, but we call it alkali. Go ahead.
Have you heard any, I've heard frequently that the application of lime will really help fix those alkali problems, or salty ground, a lot of us call it. Have you heard any truth about that? Or?
I think the guy to talk to about any salts is by Naeem out of Langdon. He's really the authority on that, and
we've got some areas on our farm that are pretty salty or alkali, we call it, you know, and I've always wanted to try and recover them. I know that we've done a lot of surface. The surface drainage has helped out hugely. The longer you can keep it there in a puddle there, the less salty it gets, but we've got a couple of areas that we've kept drained and we just want to stay salty. And I was wondering if you had any tips on lime application or anything besides drainage to help that.
so do I have any tips on getting rid of salty areas in the field? I guess the very first and foremost is reduce tillage, stop tillage. It's always tempting when it's white out there to go and till it, because it's going to be black and it's going to look nice, you know, tomorrow or today. But that's probably the worst thing you could do. Get good roots growing, keep them growing, whatever it takes. But I'd really refer to Naeem and Langdon for better answers. He's certainly studied this for a long time at the research extension.
What's his name?
Naeem. It'd be pretty easy to find online. Yeah, for an extension or something like that. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much for your attention. Feel free to contact me anytime.
Thank you, Mike, for sharing what's going on in your